Caring makes you weak. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're sitting there, maybe feeling a little uncomfortable, maybe even a little angry. How can he say that? You might be wondering, is not caring what makes us human? Have you ever cared so much about something or someone that it paralyzed you? Have you ever been so invested in an outcome that you could not think straight? That's what I'm talking about. That's the kind of caring that makes you weak. I'm not here to tell you to stop caring altogether. Oh no, that's not it at all. I'm here to help you understand the difference between caring that empowers you and caring that cripples you. Because my friends, there is a difference, and it's as wide as the Grand Canyon. When I say caring makes you weak, I'm talking about a specific kind of caring. It's the kind that keeps you up at night worrying about things you cannot control. It's the kind that makes you sacrifice your own well-being for others who may not even appreciate it. It's the kind that makes you lose sight of your own goals and dreams because you are too busy trying to please everyone else. That kind of caring, it's a trap, it's quicksand. And the more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. There's another kind of caring, a kind that makes you strong, a kind that propels you forward instead of holding you back. And that's what we are going to talk about today. Let me tell you a story. There was once a young man who cared deeply about his family business. He worked day and night, pouring his heart and soul into every aspect of the company. He cared so much that he neglected his health, his relationships, and his personal growth. He thought he was being strong, being responsible, but in reality, he was making himself weak. One day, he collapsed from exhaustion. And as he lay in that hospital bed, he had an epiphany. He realized that by caring so much about one thing, he had made himself vulnerable. He had put all his eggs in one basket, and now that basket was crushing him. That's when he learned the truth. Caring makes you weak when it's not balanced with self-care and perspective. Now, I can hear some of you thinking, but is not it selfish to put yourself first? And to that I say, is it selfish for a tree to grow deep roots? Is it selfish for an airplane to secure its own oxygen mask before helping others? Of course not. It's necessary. It's survival. When you care about yourself first, your health, your growth, your peace of mind, you become stronger. And when you are stronger, you are in a much better position to care for others. It's like compound interest for your soul. The more you invest in yourself, the more you have to give to others. But dig deeper into this idea of caring that makes you weak. It often starts with good intentions. You want to be a good person. You want to help. You want to make a difference. These are all noble goals. But somewhere along the way, things get twisted. You start taking on other people's problems as if they were your own. You begin to feel responsible for everyone else's happiness. You sacrifice your own needs and desires because you think that's what it means to care. And before you know it, you are exhausted. You are resentful. You are weak. Not because you cared, but because you cared in the wrong way. So how do we fix this? How do we care without becoming weak? Well, it starts with understanding that true strength comes from balance. Imagine you are on a seesaw. On one side is caring for others, and on the other side is caring for yourself. If you put all your weight on caring for others, what happens? The seesaw tips and you go crashing to the ground. But if you balance it just right, you can enjoy the ride and even lift others up with you. Balance. It's not about not caring. It's about caring smart. Now, let me give you a few practical ways to care without becoming weak. Set boundaries. Learn to say no. Understand that you cannot be all things to all people. It's okay to have limits. In fact, it's necessary. Prioritize self-care. And I'm not just talking about bubble baths and massages, although those are nice. I'm talking about real, deep self-care, taking care of your health, nurturing your mind, feeding your soul. Because when you are running on empty, you've got nothing left to give. Practice detachment. This does not mean you do not care. It means you care without getting entangled. You offer support without taking on the burden. You give advice without feeling responsible for the outcome. Focus on what you can control. So much of our energy is wasted on things we cannot change. The weather, other people's opinions, the past, let it go. Put your caring energy into the things you can actually influence. Cultivate resilience. Life is going to throw curveballs at you. People you care about will disappoint you. Plans will fall through. But if you are resilient, if you've built up your inner strength, you can weather these storms without being knocked down. Now, I want you to think about someone you admire. Someone who seems to have it all together. Someone who manages to care deeply while still maintaining their own strength and identity. What do they do differently? I'll tell you, they've mastered this balance we are talking about. They know how to give without depleting themselves. They know how to support others without taking on their burdens. They know how to care deeply while still maintaining healthy boundaries. You can be like that too. You have that potential within you, but it takes work. It takes practice. It takes a willingness to sometimes put yourself first, even when it feels uncomfortable. Because that's often what keeps us trapped in this cycle of weak caring. We feel guilty for taking care of ourselves. We feel guilty for saying no. We feel guilty for not solving everyone else's problems. But guilt is a liar. Guilt tells you that you are being selfish when you are really being smart. Guilt tells you that you are not doing enough when you are already doing more than your fair share. Do not listen to guilt. Listen to wisdom. And wisdom says that the strongest, most effective caregivers are the ones who know how to care for themselves. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment what your life would look like if you mastered this balance. If you learned to care without becoming weak. Maybe you would have more energy. Maybe you would feel more fulfilled. Maybe you would actually be able to make a bigger impact because you are coming from a place of strength rather than depletion. Sounds pretty good, does not it? Well, let me tell you, it's possible. It's more than possible. It's necessary. The world needs people who care, but it needs people who care from a place of strength, not weakness. It needs people who can stand firm in their own power while still extending a hand to others. That's the kind of caring that changes lives. That's the kind of caring that moves mountains. That's the kind of caring that makes a real difference. So how do we get there? How do we transform our caring from a source of weakness to a source of strength? It starts with awareness. It starts with recognizing when we are falling into those old patterns of weak caring. You know the signs? Feeling overwhelmed, feeling resentful, feeling like you are always giving and never receiving. When you notice these signs, that's your cue to step back and reassess. Ask yourself, am I caring in a way that empowers me or in a way that depletes me? Am I maintaining a healthy balance or am I tipping the scales too far in one direction? These questions are not always easy to answer. Sometimes we are so deep in the habit of weak caring that we cannot even see it. That's why it's important to have people in your life who can give you honest feedback. People who can lovingly point out when you are sacrificing too much of yourself. But awareness is just the first step. The next step is action, and that's where many people get stuck. They know they need to change, but they do not know how. Or they're afraid of what might happen if they start putting themselves first. The world will not fall apart if you start taking care of yourself. In fact, it might just get a little bit better. Because when you are stronger, when you are more balanced, you have so much more to give. So what does this action look like? It might mean learning to say no to requests that drain you. It might mean setting aside time each day for your own personal growth and development. It might mean having difficult conversations with people who are used to you always putting their needs first. These actions are not always easy. They might feel uncomfortable at first. You might worry that people will not like you as much if you start setting boundaries. But here's the truth. The people who truly care about you will respect your need for balance. And the ones who do not? Well, maybe they were part of the problem all along. When I say caring makes you weak, I'm not advocating for selfishness. I'm not telling you to stop caring about others altogether. That's not the answer, and it never will be. What I'm advocating for is smart caring. Caring that comes from a place of strength and abundance, not from a place of obligation and depletion. When you're on an airplane, they always tell you to put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. Why? Because if you pass out from lack of oxygen, you cannot help anyone. The same principle applies in life. If you are constantly giving without replenishing yourself, eventually you will have nothing left to give. So how do we care from a place of strength? It starts with self-awareness. You need to know your limits. You need to understand what energizes you and what drains you. And you need to be honest with yourself about these things. If helping at the local soup kitchen once a week fills you up and makes you feel connected to your community, that's great. Keep doing it. But if you find yourself dreading it, if it leaves you feeling depleted and resentful, then it's time to reassess. Maybe you need to reduce your commitment. Maybe you need to find a different way to contribute. Or maybe you just need to give yourself permission to take a break. The key is to listen to yourself, to pay attention to how you feel, not just in the moment, but in the hours and days that follow. Because caring that makes you strong should leave you feeling energized and fulfilled, not drained and resentful. Boundaries are crucial when it comes to caring without becoming weak. Boundaries are like fences. They define where you end and where others begin. They protect your energy, your time, and your emotional well-being. And contrary to what some might think, having strong boundaries does not mean you care less. It means you care more effectively. When you have clear boundaries, you're able to show up fully for the things and people you care about. You are not spread thin trying to be everything to everyone. Instead, you are focused and intentional with your caring. So how do you set boundaries? It starts with knowing what you are willing to do and what you are not willing to do. It means being clear about your limits and communicating them to others. For example, maybe you are willing to listen to a friend's problems, but you are not willing to solve them for them. Maybe you are willing to help your siblings financially in an emergency, but you are not willing to support them indefinitely. These boundaries might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to always saying yes. But remember, every time you say no to something that drains you, you are saying yes to something that strengthens you. Many of us are much harder on ourselves than we are on others. We beat ourselves up for not doing enough, for not caring enough, for not being perfect. But this self-criticism does not make us better caregivers. In fact, it does the opposite. It weakens us. Self-compassion, on the other hand, makes us stronger. It allows us to acknowledge our limitations without shame. It gives us the courage to take care of ourselves without guilt. And it helps us bounce back when we inevitably make mistakes. So how do we cultivate self-compassion? It starts with treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a good friend. When you are feeling overwhelmed or like you've fallen short, ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation? Then, say those words to yourself. Remember, you are human. You are not meant to be perfect. You are meant to be real, with all the messiness and imperfection that comes with it. And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's beautiful. Many of us are great at giving. We will bend over backwards to help others, to support them, to be there for them. But when it comes to receiving help or support ourselves, that's where we struggle. We might feel like we are being a burden. We might worry that accepting help makes us weak or needy. Receiving is just as important as giving when it comes to balanced, healthy caring. When you allow others to care for you, you are not just benefiting yourself. You are giving them the opportunity to experience the joy of giving. You are strengthening your relationships through mutual support, and you are modeling healthy behavior for others. So the next time someone offers to help you, try saying yes, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if you think you can handle it on your own. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is allow yourself to be cared for. Now, I want to address something that might be on some of your minds. You might be thinking, but what about selflessness? Is not that a virtue? Are not we supposed to put others before ourselves? It's a great question, and it gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Yes, selflessness can be a beautiful thing, but true selflessness does not mean sacrificing yourself to the point of depletion. It means giving from your overflow. If you have a cup of water and you are constantly pouring it out for others without ever refilling it, eventually you will run dry. But if you keep your cup full, you can pour out for others endlessly without ever running out yourself. That's what we are aiming for here. We want to care in a way that keeps our own cup full, so we always have something to give. So how do we do that? How do we keep our cup full? It's different for everyone, but it often involves things like taking time for self-reflection and personal growth, engaging in activities that bring you joy and fulfillment, nurturing relationships that uplift and support you, taking care of your physical health through good nutrition, exercise, and rest. Continually learning and expanding your mind, connecting with something greater than yourself, whether that's through spirituality, nature, or a cause you believe in. When you prioritize these things, you are not being selfish. You are ensuring that you have the strength and resources to care effectively for others. Sometimes the strongest, most caring thing you can do is to let go. Let go of trying to control outcomes. Let go of feeling responsible for other people's choices. Let go of relationships that consistently drain you without giving anything in return. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you care enough about yourself and the other person to allow natural consequences to unfold. It means you trust in the process of life and growth even when it's uncomfortable. This kind of letting go requires strength. It requires faith. And yes, it requires care for the long-term well-being of everyone involved, including yourself. So the next time you find yourself holding on too tightly, ask yourself, what would happen if I let go? What could I learn? What could the other person learn? Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is to step back and allow growth to happen. You see, many of us fall into the trap of thinking that caring is something that happens to us. We feel obligated to care. We think we have no choice but to take on other people's burdens. Caring is a choice, and it's a choice you get to make every single day. You get to choose who you care about and how much energy you invest in that caring. You get to choose what causes matter to you and how you want to contribute. You get to choose when to step in and when to step back. This does not mean you stop caring altogether. It means you become intentional about your caring. You align your caring with your values, your strengths, and your capacity. When you approach caring as a choice rather than an obligation, something magical happens. You start to feel empowered rather than drained. You start to see opportunities rather than burdens. You start to recognize that your caring has impact, that it matters. And when you care from this place of choice and empowerment, you become a force to be reckoned with. Think about the people who have made the biggest difference in your life. Chances are, they weren't people who cared out of obligation. They were people who chose to care, who invested their energy intentionally. That's the kind of caring we are aiming for here. When you care without becoming weak, you need to be resilient. Life is going to throw curveballs at you. The people you care about will face challenges. You will face setbacks and disappointments. Resilience is not about never getting knocked down. It's about how quickly you get back up. It's about maintaining your core strength even when the winds of life are howling around you. So how do we build resilience? It starts with perspective, understanding that challenges are not permanent, that setbacks are not failures, but opportunities for growth. It involves cultivating a growth mindset where you see every experience, good or bad, as a chance to learn and become stronger. Resilience also comes from having a strong support system. Remember, caring without becoming weak does not mean you never need help. It means you are strong enough to ask for it when you do. Surround yourself with people who uplift you, who challenge you to grow, who support you when times are tough. And resilience comes from practice. Every time you face a challenge and come out the other side, You are building your resilience muscle. So do not shy away from difficulties. Embrace them as opportunities to grow stronger. Now let's address something that often gets overlooked when we talk about caring. The importance of boundaries. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth diving deeper. Boundaries are not walls. They're not meant to keep people out. They're guidelines that define where you end and others begin. They're tools that help you care effectively without losing yourself in the process. Setting boundaries might feel selfish at first, especially if you are used to always putting others first. But here's the truth. Boundaries are acts of self-care that allow you to show up more fully for others. When you have clear boundaries, you are able to give from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. You are able to say yes to the things that truly matter because you've learned to say no to the things that do not. So how do you set effective boundaries? Start by getting clear on your values and priorities. What's non-negotiable for you? What are you willing to compromise on? Once you have clarity on these things, communicate them clearly and consistently to others. Remember, you do not need to justify your boundaries. No is a complete sentence. And while some people might push back at first, those who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. Self-awareness is like a superpower when it comes to caring effectively. It's about understanding your own emotions, motivations, and patterns. It's about recognizing when you're slipping into old habits of weak caring and having the tools to course. Developing self-awareness takes time and practice. It involves regularly checking in with yourself. How are you feeling? What's driving your actions? Are you caring from a place of strength or obligation? One powerful tool for developing self-awareness is journaling. Take a few minutes each day to write down your thoughts and feelings. Over time, you will start to notice patterns. You will gain insights into what energizes you and what drains you. Another powerful tool is meditation or mindfulness practice. These practices help you develop the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. This can be incredibly valuable when you are in the midst of a challenging caring situation. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that putting ourselves first is selfish, that taking care of our own needs before others is somehow wrong. But this belief is not only inaccurate, it's harmful. Think about it this way. If you are running on empty, how effective can you really be in caring for others? If you are constantly sacrificing your own well-being, how sustainable is your caring? True, selfishness is caring only about yourself to the exclusion of others. What we are talking about here is self-care, which is fundamentally different. Self-care is about maintaining your own well-being so that you can show up fully for others and for your own life. It's like the oxygen mask analogy we mentioned earlier. You put your own mask on first, not because you are selfish, but because it allows you to help others more effectively. So the next time you feel guilty for taking care of yourself, remember, self-care is not selfish. It's necessary. It's what allows you to care deeply and effectively without becoming weak. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions as well as the emotions of others. And let me tell you, it's a game changer when it comes to caring effectively. When you have high emotional intelligence, you are able to navigate complex emotional situations without getting swept away by them. You are able to offer support without taking on other people's emotional burdens as your own. So how do you develop emotional intelligence? It starts with self-awareness, which we've already talked about, but it also involves practicing empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Empathy does not mean you have to feel exactly what the other person is feeling. It means you are able to recognize and acknowledge their emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Another key aspect of emotional intelligence is emotional regulation, the ability to manage your own emotions effectively. This does not mean suppressing your emotions. It means being able to experience them fully without being controlled by them. When you combine self-awareness, empathy, and emotional regulation, You become a powerhouse of caring. You are able to connect deeply with others while maintaining your own emotional balance. This compassion fatigue is what happens when you care so much. For so long that you become emotionally exhausted. It's common among people in caring professions, but it can happen to anyone who cares deeply about others or causes. The irony of compassion fatigue is that it can make you less effective at caring. You might find yourself becoming numb, detached, or even resentful towards the people or causes you once cared about deeply. Compassion fatigue is not inevitable. It's not the natural result of caring deeply. It's what happens when we care in ways that deplete us rather than strengthen us. So how do we prevent compassion fatigue? By practicing what some call compassion satisfaction. This involves finding joy and fulfillment in the act of caring rather than solely focusing on outcomes. It means celebrating small victories, acknowledging the positive impact you are making. Even if you cannot solve every problem, it means finding ways to recharge and renew your compassion regularly. Remember, caring is not a finite resource that gets used up. When done right, it's renewable energy that can sustain you and those around you indefinitely. It's easy to get caught up in the immediate challenges and struggles of caring, to feel overwhelmed by the needs around us. But maintaining a broader perspective can help us care more effectively without becoming depleted. This might mean zooming out and looking at the bigger picture, remembering that every act of care, no matter how small, contributes to a larger tapestry of compassion and connection in the world. It might mean taking the long view, understanding that change and growth often happen slowly, over time. That the seeds of care we plant today might not bloom until far into the future. And it might mean shifting our focus from problems to possibilities. Instead of getting overwhelmed by what's wrong, we can choose to focus on what could be right, on the potential for positive change and growth. This shift in perspective does not mean we ignore problems or challenges. It means we approach them with hope and creativity rather than despair and exhaustion. Many of us second-guess ourselves when it comes to caring. We worry that we are not doing enough or that we are doing too much. We question our motivations and our impact. You are the expert on your own capacity to care. You know better than anyone else what you are capable of, what energizes you, and what depletes you. Developing self-trust means learning to listen to your own inner wisdom. It means honoring your instincts and intuitions about how and when to care. This does not mean you never seek advice or input from others, but it does mean that ultimately you trust yourself to make the right decisions about your caring. When you trust yourself, you are able to care more confidently and effectively. You are able to set boundaries without guilt. You are able to give generously without fear of burnout. So how do we develop self-trust? It starts with paying attention to your own experiences. Notice what happens when you follow your instincts versus when you override them. Learn from both your successes and your mistakes. Practice making decisions and standing by them. Start small if you need to. The more you exercise your decision-making muscle, the stronger it will become. And remember, self-trust is not about being perfect. It's about being willing to learn and grow from every experience. We often think of caring as an individual act, something we do on our own. But the truth is, we are not meant to care alone. We are meant to care in community. When we connect with others who share our values and our commitment to caring, something magical happens. We find support, inspiration, and renewed energy. We are reminded that we are not alone in our efforts to make a difference. Being part of a caring community does not mean you all have to care about the same things in the same ways. It means you support each other in your individual caring journeys. You celebrate each other's successes. You offer comfort and encouragement during challenging times. So how do we build or find these caring communities? It might mean connecting with others who share your passions or causes. It might mean forming a support group with others who are navigating similar caring challenges. It might even mean creating your own community, starting a group or initiative that brings together like-minded individuals who want to make a difference. Remember, caring in community does not mean you lose your individuality. It means you gain strength, support, and perspective that can help you care more effectively without becoming weak. Many of us have been taught that true caring is selfless, that we should give without expecting anything in return. And while there's beauty in unconditional giving, this belief can lead us down the path of weak caring if we are not careful. The truth is, healthy caring involves a balance of giving and receiving. It's not about keeping score or expecting a direct return on your investment. It's about recognizing that energy needs to flow both ways for any relationship or system to be sustainable. This might mean being open to receiving care from others when you need it. It might mean setting up systems of mutual support where everyone contributes and everyone benefits. It might even mean recognizing the indirect ways you benefit from your acts of caring. The sense of purpose, the connections you form, the personal growth you experience. Remember, reciprocity in caring does not diminish the value or sincerity of your care. If anything, it enhances it by making it more sustainable and authentic. Caring effectively is not a destination you reach once and then you are done. It's an ongoing journey of learning, adapting, and evolving. The world is constantly changing. The needs of those we care about are changing, and we ourselves are changing. To care effectively without becoming weak, we need to be willing to continually learn and grow. This might mean seeking out new knowledge and skills related to your areas of caring. It might mean being open to feedback and willing to adjust your approach when needed. It might mean exploring new ways of caring, or even discovering new areas where your care is needed. It might mean learning more about yourself, your strengths, your limitations, your patterns. Remember, every experience, whether it feels like a success or a failure, is an opportunity to learn and grow. The key is to approach your caring journey with curiosity and openness. Many of us fall into the belief that if we are going to care, we need to do it perfectly. We set impossibly high standards for ourselves. We beat ourselves up when we fall short. Perfectionism is the enemy of effective caring. It leads to burnout, disappointment, and ultimately weak caring. Perfect caring does not exist. What exists is real, messy, imperfect human caring. And that's beautiful, that's powerful. When we let go of the need to be perfect, we free ourselves to care more authentically and effectively. We are able to take risks, to try new things, to learn from our mistakes. So the next time you find yourself striving for perfection in your caring, take a step back. Remind yourself that your best is enough, that imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. We often focus so much on the challenges and struggles of caring that we forget to celebrate our successes, no matter how small they might seem. Celebration is not frivolous. It's not a waste of time or energy. It's a vital part of sustainable, effective caring. When we celebrate our caring efforts and their impacts, we renew our energy. We remind ourselves why we care in the first place. We strengthen our resilience for future challenges. Celebration does not have to be grand or elaborate. It might be as simple as taking a moment to acknowledge a small victory. It might be sharing your success with a supportive friend or community. It might even be celebrating the mere fact that you showed up, that you tried, regardless of the outcome. Remember, every act of care, no matter how small, is worth celebrating, because every act of care contributes to making the world a little bit better. Caring effectively without becoming weak requires us to be flexible, to be willing to adapt our approach based on changing circumstances, new information, or feedback. This might mean being open to new ways of caring. It might mean recognizing when our current approach is not working and being willing to try something different. It might even mean being flexible in our definition of what caring looks like. Sometimes the most caring thing we can do is step back and allow others to find their own solutions. Flexibility in caring does not mean we abandon our values or our commitments. It means we are willing to find new ways to express those values and fulfill those commitments. Remember, the goal is not to stick rigidly to one way of caring. The goal is to care effectively and sustainably in ways that strengthen both ourselves and those we care about. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth revisiting because it's so important. Boundaries are not limitations on your caring. They're the framework that allows your caring to be sustainable and effective. Think of boundaries like the banks of a river. They do not restrict the flow of water. They channel it, giving it direction and power. In the same way, boundaries channel your caring energy. They help you focus your efforts where they will be most effective. They protect you from overextending yourself or being taken advantage of. Setting and maintaining boundaries takes practice. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to saying yes to every request for help. But remember, every time you say no to something that drains you, you are saying yes to something that energizes you. Every boundary you set is an act of self-care that allows you to show up more fully for the things and people you truly care about. Many of us want our caring to have a big impact. We want to solve big problems, to make significant changes. And while these are noble goals, they can sometimes lead us down the path of weak caring if we are not careful. Sustainable impact is about consistent, ongoing efforts rather than grand, one-time gestures. It's about creating ripple effects that continue long after our initial act of care. This might mean focusing on small, consistent actions rather than trying to do everything at once. It might mean investing in long-term solutions rather than quick fixes. It might even mean shifting our focus from outcomes to processes. Instead of fixating on specific results, we can focus on creating systems and environments that foster ongoing positive change. Remember, sustainable impact is not about being a superhero. It's about being a consistent, positive force in the world. It's about creating change that lasts, even when we are not actively involved. Self-reflection is like a compass that helps us navigate our caring journey. It allows us to check in with ourselves regularly to ensure we are staying true to our values and taking care of our own needs. This might involve setting aside time each day or week for quiet contemplation.